Some time ago, dungeons suddenly appeared all over the world. Inside these dungeons, people discovered a next-generation resource called magic stones. These stones quickly became extremely valuable, and countries around the world created laws and systems to control the dungeons. Only people with a special qualification were allowed to enter them. Those people were called adventurers. Among all adventurers in Japan, there was only one person who had reached the highest rank, SSS. On a certain night, everything was perfectly prepared. A top-class restaurant had been completely reserved. The night view sparkled outside. A bouquet of roses and a ring were ready. The young man who arranged all of this quietly checked the setup and felt satisfied. His name was Harukaze Raito. Raito had become an adventurer in his first year of high school, and it had taken him many years of dangerous work to reach this point. Adventurers earned money by collecting magic stones, but every time they entered a dungeon, they risked their lives. Because the government managed the dungeons, the rewards were good, and Raito had been able to make a living this way. After meeting Kaori, Raito began working even harder than before. He wanted to earn enough money so he would never cause her trouble in the future. Kaori had always supported him. When he defeated his first powerful monster, she had been just as happy as if it were her own success. Raito also studied investment and slowly built up his savings. At last, he had earned enough. All of his effort had led to this moment. His heart was beating fast. He planned to retire from being an adventurer and live a peaceful life with Kaori. To begin that dream, he was going to propose to her. Kaori soon arrived at the restaurant. She admired the place, and Raito felt glad she had come. When she realized why he had chosen such a luxurious location, she quickly understood what he was planning. Raito admitted that he intended to propose, even though he felt the timing might be strange. Before he could properly explain himself, Kaori suddenly rejected him. She said there was no way she would marry someone like him. Raito was completely shocked. Kaori questioned why he looked so confused. She pointed out that his life as an adventurer was unstable and dangerous. She said he was always pushing himself too hard. She complained that their dates were always cheap and lacked style, and admitted that she had been tired of it for a long time. Raito didn't know how to react. He couldn't understand why she was saying these things now, since she had never complained before and had just praised the place moments earlier. Kaori became angry and told him to stop. At that moment, another man entered the restaurant. He said that men who kept pushing were disliked, and explained that he had been waiting outside for Kaori but came in because he was worried. Kaori immediately ran to the man named Katsuki and hugged him. She revealed that Katsuki was an elite staff member of the Adventurers Guild. Unlike Raito, Katsuki always took her to nice places. She also revealed that Katsuki had already proposed to her. Hearing this, Raito was left completely stunned. Katsuki showed a smug expression after learning that Raito was an adventurer. As a staff member of the Adventurers Guild, he claimed he could not ignore someone like Raito holding that position. He demanded to see Raito's adventurer license immediately and declared that he would erase Raito's registration on the spot. Raito froze in place. He could not understand what was happening. He had already planned to quit being an adventurer and live a peaceful life with Kaori. Now he began to wonder if he had been the only one holding on to that dream. His hands slowly clenched into a fist. There was no way he could accept this situation, yet Kaori's smiling face appeared in his mind. Raito hesitated, but then reached into his pocket. Even though he felt frustrated and hurt, he still wanted to respect Kaori's happiness. He took out his license and handed it to Katsuki. Inside, Raito thought that he had already planned to retire anyway. He would start everything over from nothing. After a short moment, Katsuki declared that Raito's registration had been erased and threw the license onto the floor. Kaori and Katsuki then turned away, leaving Raito behind. Katsuki quietly remarked that Raito was now officially unemployed. The restaurant staff looked at Raito with concern as he suddenly started laughing. He muttered that since he had just been rejected, people should laugh at him. He then told everyone that they should drink and forget everything for the night. He wanted to drown his sorrow in alcohol. The manager, the chef, and even the waiters agreed. The waiter said he would bring out the best wine the restaurant had. Raito raised a toast to his miserable self, who had lost both his job and the woman he loved. The next day, a woman hurriedly reported an urgent issue to the guild master. The registration of the SSS-ranked Adventurer Zero, also known as Harukaze Raito, had been deleted. The guild master checked the list himself and confirmed it. He asked who had approved Zero's retirement. The woman said no one knew yet and that they were still investigating. She hoped it was only a mistake. However, more shocking news followed. The clan that Zero had led, the Twilight Tea Party, had also been disbanded. The guild master was clearly surprised and demanded to know why all of this had happened so suddenly. After discussion in the meeting room, the final conclusion was that Raito had quit being an adventurer. Some people quietly wondered where Raito had gone. One girl regretted not properly exchanging contact information with him. Another woman admitted that she had always been curious about Raito and questioned why no one had his contact details. The first girl quickly denied being interested, which caused another woman with short hair to comment that it was boring. The girl became serious again and said this was not the time for jokes. She truly wondered where Raito was now. At the same time, in a quiet playground filled with blooming flowers and a gentle breeze, Raito was sitting alone on a bench. He complained about his headache. The night before, he had drunk heavily with the restaurant staff and eventually passed out. Thinking about it now, he felt embarrassed. He let out a long sigh and decided to use magic to ease his pain. As he sat there, Kaori's face once again came to his mind. Raito decided there was no need to heal his headache yet. He felt that if he became clear-headed, too many painful memories would come back. Instead, he planned to quietly eat some cup noodles. At that moment, someone called out to him. When he looked up, he saw a young girl standing there. She asked if he could buy her some food. Raito was confused by this sudden request. The girl explained that she had not eaten breakfast and was asking him because she was a cute girl. Raito couldn't understand what kind of person she was. When she asked again, he refused to buy her food. She reacted by calling him stingy. The girl then guessed that Raito might be someone who had been laid off from work and was sitting in the park because he had nowhere to go. Raito denied this and told her that she should not be begging for food. He said she should be in school and urged her to go. The girl hesitated before revealing that she had already quit school. Raito fell silent. The girl explained that many things had happened to her. She said she might die today or tomorrow and only wanted someone, anyone, to remember her even a little. That was why she talked to strangers. She laughed awkwardly and wondered why she was saying such heavy things, then thought it might be because Raito felt easy to talk to. Raito felt shocked by what she was saying. He sighed and told her about what had happened to him the day before. He explained that he had tried to propose, but his girlfriend had rejected him because she already had a fiancé. They had been together since high school. Hearing this, the girl commented that it meant Raito had been cheated on and said it was really pathetic. She then talked about herself. She revealed that her parents had abandoned her and disappeared. She had later discovered that someone had withdrawn her from school without her knowledge. She couldn't even bring herself to tell her friends. Her place to stay had also been canceled, so she had nowhere to return to. She couldn't even get a normal part-time job because she didn't have parental consent. The only option left for her was to become an adventurer. However, she had never fought before, so she believed she might end up being eaten by monsters as soon as tomorrow. Raito looked at her carefully. Now that he paid attention, he noticed how worn out she looked. She acted cheerful and energetic, but her eyes were empty and tired. Even so, deep inside those eyes, he could still see a strong will to live. Raito offered her his cup noodles. The girl was surprised and first refused, saying she wouldn't eat someone else's leftovers. Raito explained that he had not taken a single bite yet because she had started talking to him. At that moment, her stomach growled. She finally accepted the food and complained that the noodles had gone soggy. Raito thought it was because she had talked for so long. As she ate, tears began to fall. Raito smiled. The girl laughed weakly and said that even though it tasted bad, it felt comforting. She admitted that she didn't want to die yet and didn't want to become monster food. She sniffed as she tried to hold herself together. Raito encouraged her to stubbornly keep living. After she finished eating, Raito stood up. He explained that G-class dungeons did not require a license and were safe enough that she wouldn't die there. He said she could start by gaining experience in those dungeons and told her he would go with her so she wouldn't be alone. The girl misunderstood his intention and teased him, but Raito clarified that he was only helping her because he didn't want her death to leave a bitter feeling inside him. It was his own way of finding satisfaction as a former adventurer. The girl accepted his help. She introduced herself as Karen Hiragi. Raito also introduced himself in return. Raito thought that he had believed he no longer cared about anything. Yet here he was choosing to do this. He decided that he would look after this kid for a while. He then offered to treat Karen to a cream-filled bun for dessert. Karen felt happy, but wondered why he specifically chose a cream-filled bun. At the beginning of Chapter 2, Karen showed how much she was enjoying her food. Raito suddenly found himself heading toward a dungeon together with a high school girl he had only just met. Even he felt surprised by how quickly things had changed. Watching her eat so happily made him think about how sincerely she seemed to enjoy something so simple. As they walked, they talked about magic stones. Karen remembered hearing that magic stones were used for power generation. Raito explained that they were an eco-friendly energy source that was very convenient, which was why the government bought them. He also explained that magic stones could affect the human body by increasing stamina or allowing someone to use magic, but using them that way was illegal. To demonstrate, he created a small glowing orb on his fingertip. Karen was amazed. since she had never seen anyone use magic in real life before. Raito reminded her to be careful and to watch where she was going. After some time, they arrived at their destination. Karen was stunned by what stood in front of her. Raito explained that the building was a G-class dungeon and also the local Katsushika branch of the Adventurers Guild. When they went inside, Karen felt confused because it looked like a completely normal building and wondered if this was really the place. At the counter, a woman greeted them and asked for identification. However, she suddenly looked surprised when she realized who Raito was. Raito, on the other hand, did not recognize her. Karen noticed the strange reaction and wondered if they knew each other. Raito thought she might have been someone who attended the same high school as him. The woman at the counter then brought up Kaori and mentioned that Raito had been dumped. She proudly stated that she had been the one who introduced Katsuki to Kaori. Raito realized that this woman might be connected to what had happened. She continued by saying that Kaori was beautiful and that Katsuki suited her better than Raito ever had. She then brought up the fact that Raito's adventurer license had been revoked and told him that he should stop coming to places like this and go find a proper job. Raito thought about how he was not struggling for money, but the woman brushed this aside, criticizing adventurers in general. She took Raito's identification, placed it on a machine, and typed on the computer. After checking the system, she confirmed that Raito had been put on a blacklist and could not re-register as an adventurer. She looked down on adventurers, calling them losers, and told them to move on and look for new work. She then pointed at Karen and said the same applied to her, claiming Karen would be better off studying seriously and becoming something like a civil servant instead of staying around someone like Raito. Raito began to feel that it might be time to speak back. However, when he looked at Karen, he saw that she was already shaking with anger. Her eyes were wide, and her fists were tightly clenched. Raito sensed that the situation was becoming dangerous and tried to stop the woman from going any further. At that moment, another woman arrived and questioned why the counter staff was talking so much instead of working. The first woman was startled. The newcomer, who had short hair, told her to go to the back and said she would take over. The first woman obeyed and left. The short-haired woman apologized for what had happened and calmly asked how she could help them. Raito felt that this person seemed far more reasonable. He then explained that the girl with him wanted to become an adventurer and that he wished to request permission for her admission, since he would be accompanying her. The short-haired woman said she understood and began verifying Raito's identity. Raito and Karen waited nearby. While they stood there, Raito gently patted Karen on the head and thanked her. He realized that she had gotten angry on his behalf. Karen smiled and seemed pleased. After a short while, the short-haired woman returned and handed them a pass. Raito then led Karen toward the entrance gate. Other adventurers were already there, each holding weapons. Seeing this, Karen felt uneasy because neither she nor Raito was carrying anything. She wondered if it would really be fine without armor or weapons. Raito explained about equipment and then demonstrated something to her. He activated space magic, and a faint light appeared. Karen stared in amazement. Raito revealed that this was a type of magic used to summon a separate storage space. From there, he took out his personal armor and handed it to Karen. He told her to go to the changing room and put it on. Karen was shocked and deeply thankful. Raito told her to meet him again once she finished changing. Karen agreed and went off. Raito waited alone in the lobby and checked his phone. He thought that since the monsters would probably be the same as usual, and this was Karen's first time, simple training with basic weapons would be enough. He also thought about eating somewhere after the exploration. 10 minutes passed. Then 30 minutes went by. Raito started wondering if it really took this long for girls to change. Inside the changing room, Karen hesitated before finally coming out. She seemed unsure and asked how the armor was supposed to be worn. Raito apologized in his mind for forgetting to explain. He showed her the device around the wrist and told her how to activate it. When she did, the armor automatically adjusted and fit her body. Karen was amazed at the change. The armor no longer looked the same as before. She commented that it still felt like she was wearing nothing. Raito explained that the armor was transparent full-body protection and that it was stretchable, so it should fit her perfectly. Karen then mentioned that it felt a little tight around her chest and waist. Raito immediately blushed and looked away. Karen noticed his reaction and wondered if something was strange. Raito quickly brushed it off and said it was nothing. Since she had finished changing, they prepared to leave. As they walked through the lobby, some adventurers whispered among themselves, shocked that Karen appeared to be wearing no armor at all. To them, it looked reckless. Suddenly, a cry for help echoed through the building. An adventurer had been badly injured, and someone was urgently calling for medical staff. A healer rushed over. The injured man had fallen from a cliff during a fight with a monster. He was in great pain, and the bleeding would not stop. He had not realized how dangerous it would be. Karen looked at the wounded man, her face turning pale. The injured adventurer regretted coming. saying he had only heard that dungeons were an easy way to make money. He cursed his own foolishness. Karen looked frightened by the sight. Raito calmly told her that it would be fine, since medical staff were already there. He said they should leave it to the professionals and continue on. They then headed toward the entrance gate. As they walked, Raito reminded Karen to be careful. He explained that the injured man was panicking because of his wounds. With that, they continued forward toward the dungeon. Raito noticed that Karen was tightly clutching her sleeve. It was clear that she was feeling anxious. She admitted to being worried because of what they had just seen. The image of the injured adventurer with blood pouring out of him was still in her mind. She realized that even men with proper equipment could get seriously hurt. Compared to them, she felt like she was dressed far too casually. Although she had heard that adventuring could make good money, fear still filled her. Her hand was trembling. She remembered what the receptionist had said earlier, suggesting that she would be better off becoming a public servant instead of getting hurt and being laughed at as a loser. Because of that, she began to wonder if she should look for a normal job instead. She questioned whether becoming an adventurer was really the right choice for her. Raito stayed silent for a moment, then touched his forehead as if organizing his thoughts. He decided to speak honestly with her. He told her that he himself had been called a loser many times. He then brought up how much money he had earned just in the previous month and asked her to guess. When she imagined an ordinary amount, he explained that it was far higher than that. After raising his adventurer rank, his income had reached 20 billion in a single month. And that was only what had been deposited into his account. In reality, it was even more. Despite earning billions every month, the receptionist had still called him a loser, which made the situation seem ridiculous. He then explained that the armor Karen was wearing cost at least 50 million. Even though it was thin and light, it was hundreds of times more durable than standard rental equipment. Raito acknowledged that adventurers truly did face life-threatening danger. Dungeons were filled with traps, and death was always a possibility. However, he made it clear that Karen being placed in danger would not happen. No matter what occurred, he intended to protect her life. Karen was deeply moved by his words. Raito then told her that dungeons held endless possibilities, and that she should pour all her strength into striving for the top. By that time, they had already entered the dungeon. The inside looked like a wide, empty grassland. Karen was surprised that a dungeon could look like this. Raito explained that this G-class dungeon at the Katsushika branch was commonly known as Lumberjack's Clearing. Raito walked ahead of her, leading the way. Karen followed, filled with determination. She resolved to do her best. She had chosen to become an adventurer, and she intended to grow incredibly strong. With that resolve in her heart, she continued forward into the dungeon. At the start of the third chapter, the party arrived at the dungeon entrance. Raito advised a cautious approach as they descended into the depths, a sentiment Karen quickly affirmed. Before proceeding, Raito utilized his magic and recalled his intention to provide Karen with a proper weapon. He presented her with a sword, which prompted Karen to question the simplicity of the gift. Given the high quality of her armor, she had anticipated a weapon capable of firing energy beams or possessing mechanical gimmicks. Raito clarified that it was merely a standard iron sword, noting that since only weak, wolf-type monsters inhabited this area, a basic blade was sufficient. Despite Raito's reassurance, Karen remained fearful of the wolves. Raito pointed out the clear visibility of their surroundings, explaining that the lack of cover made a surprise attack impossible. He encouraged her to relax and observe the environment as they walked. Karen was soon struck by the openness of the terrain, but her awe was cut short when she spotted a wolf in the distance. Raito stepped back, instructing her to take the initiative and attempt an attack, promising to intervene if the situation turned dangerous. Hesitation gripped Karen as the wolf charged. Her scream echoed as the creature lunged past her with startling speed. Raito urged her to strike with the sword, and she swung the blade tentatively. He reminded her to maintain focus on the enemy, just as it prepared for another rush. This time, Karen successfully struck the wolf, but the impact sent her tumbling to the ground, leaving her weaponless as the sword slid away. As the wolf prepared a mid-air leap to finish its assault, Raito moved between them and dispatched the beast instantly. Shocked and breathless, Karen listened as Raito reaffirmed his vow to protect her. She admitted her fear of death and expressed her gratitude, to which he responded that he would save her as many times as necessary. A glimmer near her hand caught her attention, revealing a magic stone. Karen marveled at its mysterious color and beauty, momentarily distracted by its monetary value. She then recalled Raito's previous mention that these stones could boost stamina or grant magical abilities. When she hinted at using the stone immediately, Raito strictly forbade it. He explained the legal complexities, noting that depending on the quantity found, such stones must be declared for tax purposes. He warned that failing to do so constituted tax evasion and could lead to her arrest. Terrified by the mental image of being imprisoned, Karen quickly abandoned the idea. Raito then urged her to stand as another wolf approached. Under his direct guidance, she dodged to the right and kept her eyes fixed on the monster. Waiting for the precise moment he suggested, she gripped her sword firmly and delivered a decisive slash. The wolf collapsed, earning a cheer from Raito. Though Karen was initially relieved, Raito informed her that the enemy was still alive and required subsequent strikes. She complied, hitting the creature until it dissipated into smoke, leaving only a glimmering stone behind. Raito offered his sincere congratulations and praise for her first successful solo victory. Closing the distance between them, Raito reached out and patted Karen's head. She pointed out that such a gesture generally counted as sexual harassment, prompting an immediate apology from him. However, Karen blushed and admitted that she didn't mind if it was him, confessing that she had rarely been praised before and that his approval made her happy. Raito expressed his gladness and encouraged her to maintain their momentum as they continued to hunt monsters. Karen's proficiency grew quickly. She slashed through another wolf, claiming its magic stone, and continued to fight until she had collected a small horde. Eventually, she found herself facing two monsters simultaneously. Raito warned her to be careful, but Karen met the challenge with a sharp glare. When the first wolf lunged, she intercepted it with a swing of her sword. When the second attempted a rear attack, she whirled around to eliminate it as well. As both creatures dissipated into smoke, Raito praised her performance. Overjoyed, Karen threw her arms around him in a hug. Raito was deeply impressed, privately considering her a hidden gem with a genuine talent for adventuring. However, as he felt her pressing against him, he found himself blushing and had to mentally urge himself to suppress any wicked thoughts. Later at the reception desk, the total count was confirmed to be 72 magic stones. The receptionist informed them that since Karen intended to take all the stones home rather than selling them, the tax would have to be paid up front in cash. Raito explained the logistics to Karen, noting that magic stones are taxed at a rate of 45%. He advised her that, for simplicity's sake, she should just remember that if she isn't exchanging the stones for money, she must pay for them. Once the formalities were finished, Raito instructed Karen on the process of absorbing the stones. He told her to take a slow, deep breath and press the stone firmly against her chest. Following his lead, Karen began the process. Her body emitted a faint glow as the magic stone disappeared into her, though she remarked that she didn't feel a significant change. Raito clarified that such a subtle effect was to be expected from G-rank stones. He suggested that once she finished absorbing the remaining stones, they should go out for a meal. In her gratitude, Karen began to call him Haru, before stopping herself, feeling the name didn't quite fit. She tried Rei, but then settled on Master. She asked if the title was acceptable, reasoning that because he was exceptionally strong and a gifted teacher, calling him Master felt right. Raito admitted it was a strange sensation to be addressed that way, but he gave her permission to use whatever name she liked. He urged her to finish the absorption process so they could head out for a yakiniku dinner. Elated, Karen called him the best and began running outside, repeatedly shouting Master. Raito watched her go, reflecting on the new title and deciding it had a nice ring to it, even if she was now saying it a bit too much. The following day began with the persistent beeping of an alarm. Raito stirred awake, groggily questioning the arrival of morning as he donned his slippers and dressed. Still heavy with sleep, he made his way to the stove and ignited the burner. As he placed his suit into the laundry basket, his mind drifted to the chaotic events of the previous day, the failure of his proposal, his retirement from adventuring, and the unexpected turn his life had taken. The sound of approaching footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Turning, he was met with the sight of Karen wearing only her underwear. She hurried into the room, frantically asking if something was burning. The reality of his new living situation struck him. He had officially gained a freeloader. Raito immediately advised her to cover herself, prompting a shriek from Karen as she told him to look away. He turned his back, assuring her he wasn't looking, and questioned why she was wandering around in such a state, reminding her that the guest suite he provided was fully equipped with its own bath and facilities. Karen argued that the scent of burning had reached her room, which Raito realized was due to the breakfast he had started. Clearly embarrassed but determined, Karen claimed the smell was a sign of a cooking disaster and insisted on taking over the kitchen, telling him to keep his eyes shut and wait. The result was a beautifully prepared meal that left Raito in awe. After tasting the food and praising its quality, Karen beamed with satisfaction. Raito inquired about her sleep, and she joyfully confirmed she had slept well, though she noted that the magic stone she absorbed made her feel so hot that she had stripped off her clothes during the night. Her mood shifted as she recounted a dream she'd had, a vivid memory of the day her parents abandoned her. In the dream, she had returned home to find the furniture gone and the house empty. She had been unable to contact her parents, and her landlord had promptly evicted her. Left with no options, she had gone to school only to discover that a withdrawal notice had already been submitted on her behalf. With no money and nowhere to go, she had sat and cried until she aimlessly wandered to the park, which was where the dream ended. Raito took a drink from his cup and offered words of comfort. He pointed out that, according to the timeline of her dream, she was just about to meet him in the park. He promised that if he appeared in her dreams, he would never let them turn into nightmares because she was now his precious disciple. Karen's eyes glimmered with admiration at his words, and Raito chuckled, telling her to finish eating quickly because they had a day of shopping ahead of them. Later, at the mall, Raito told Karen she could choose whatever clothes she wanted. She protested, insisting she was perfectly fine with inexpensive items, but Raito urged her not to hold back. Karen remarked that his sense of financial value was completely skewed, pointing out the expensive yakiniku dinner from the previous night and the fact that he owned the entire top floor of his tower. Raito simply replied that if he didn't spend his money, it would just continue to pile up, a statement that only furthered Karen's disbelief at his immense wealth. While walking through the mall, Raito's attention was captured by a Twilight store. He inquired if Karen was a fan of the brand, prompting her to identify it specifically as Twilight MA. She admitted it was a brand she had long admired and wished to try, noting the wide variety of styles they offered. Grinning, Raito began leading her toward the entrance. Despite Karen's protests that she hadn't meant for him to take her shopping there, he was already at the door. Upon entering, they were greeted by a staff member. Raito requested that the employee assist Karen in selecting several outfits to try on. Karen complied, blushing as she began browsing the racks. She modeled several looks for him. First an off-shoulder piece, then a third garment that prominently featured the brand's logo. Her excitement was palpable as she expressed her genuine love for the clothing line. Raito, impressed by how everything looked on her, decided on the spot to purchase every outfit she had tried. Karen was momentarily shocked by the expense, but Raito reminded her not to hold back. Before they left, the staff member noted that Raito's own clothing appeared to be from the same brand. Raito confirmed this, mentioning he had a personal connection with the label. They departed the store with Karen looking radiant with happiness. Their shopping continued as they picked out various necessities, including mugs, shampoo, and undergarments, eventually stopping to enjoy some ice cream. As they sat together, Raito noticed they still had time before evening and asked if there was anywhere else she wished to go. To his surprise, Karen requested to return to the dungeon. Though they had just been there the previous day, she explained her desire to grow stronger as quickly as possible. She aspired to reach Raito's level of skill and be able to dispatch enemies with a single, effortless slash. Raito, pleased by her proactive attitude, agreed to head home first to drop off their purchases before returning to the fray. Back at the dungeon reception, however, they were met with an unexpected complication. The receptionist apologized and informed them that 2 reports had been filed regarding their activities. The first claim was that someone had entered the dungeon without any protective gear. The second, more serious allegation, was that Raito, under the name Harukaze, was forcing Karen to defeat monsters while he unfairly profited from her work. Karen was outraged by the accusations, defending her master's character, but Raito calmly told her to step back. Sensing hostile stares from a group of hoodlums loitering nearby, Raito addressed the first concern. He invited the receptionist to take a closer look at Karen's attire. Upon inspection, the receptionist recognized the material as an inner suit, a high-level piece of equipment that provided an impenetrable defense. Realizing that Karen was actually better protected than most, the receptionist apologized and withdrew the first complaint, privately marveling at seeing such a rare and expensive piece of gear in person. Regarding the second allegation, Raito clarified that Karen was the sole beneficiary of their efforts, as she was the one absorbing every magic stone they found. Karen quickly spoke up in support, explaining her desire to grow stronger under her master's guidance and insisting that Raito had done nothing wrong. Satisfied by their explanation, the receptionist smiled and prepared to resume their registration process. Their progress was interrupted by the arrival of a group of men. The leader addressed Raito disparagingly as an old man, demanding that he release the girl. Raito, taking offense at being called old at only 24, retorted that punks like them had no business using such labels. As the receptionist stepped away momentarily to attend to a task, the lead antagonist, a man named Nomura, accused Raito of playing dumb and exploiting Karen for financial gain. He insisted that Karen leave Raito to join his own party instead. Karen firmly denied being used, but Nomura dismissed her words, assuming Raito had coerced her into silence. He continued to insult Raito, calling him a scumbag for dragging a girl into a dangerous dungeon without proper equipment. As a crowd began to gather and whisper about how dangerous or frightening Raito seemed, Karen looked around warily at the growing tension. Raito slammed a hand on the table to draw attention, reiterating that Karen was wearing top-grade protective gear, an inner suit, which provided more safety than standard armor, a fact the receptionist had already verified. The receptionist, Sarawatari, returned and addressed Nomura directly. She presented the official receipt from the previous day's magic stone tax payment, which proved that Raito had paid the taxes out of pocket while Karen kept all the stones. This provided undeniable evidence that Raito was not profiting from her work. Nomura tried to argue that Raito must be taking some form of reward, but Raito laughed off the idea. He pointed out that G-rank stones were worth mere pocket change. The notion that he would exploit a student for such a pittance was insulting. Karen stood her ground between the two groups, declaring that her master treated her with nothing but kindness and that she had absolutely no intention of adventuring with anyone else. Humiliated and defeated, Nomura and his companions retreated and fled the building. Raito sighed in relief, glad the matter was settled. After Karen thanked the receptionist, Sarawatari introduced herself formally and expressed her desire to assist them in the future. Meanwhile, outside the building, a furious Nomura punched a wall, cursing the pair and vowing that he would not forget the humiliation. Karen informed her master that she had something she wanted to ask. Raito prompted her to continue, and she brought up the topic of how he used magic. Several days had already passed since they began exploring dungeons together, and during that time Karen had developed a clear interest in magic. As a wolf rushed toward her, she continued fighting while expressing that being able to use magic would make her truly feel like an adventurer. She was fascinated by attack spells and similar abilities, and she also found the racial ability that functioned like magic storage extremely convenient. Raito identified that ability as spatial magic and reflected that he had already explained this to her on her very first day, noting once again how remarkable her growth had been. She now carried herself with confidence even when facing multiple enemies at once. Thanks to the magic stones, her physical strength and speed had unquestionably increased, and several of those stones fell to the ground as the battle ended. Raito considered that, given her progress, it might be about time for her magical aptitude to have improved as well. Karen confidently assessed that she could now manage up to 5 enemies at once. Raito then called out to her, brought up the subject of magic again, and suggested the possibility of teaching her. Karen came to a halt, her face lighting up as she reacted with visible excitement at the idea. He explained, however, that before anything else she would need to study magic, and that she would not be able to use it immediately. Her expression fell in disappointment. He elaborated that while there were rare geniuses who could wield magic through pure intuition, magic itself was fundamentally a special phenomenon grounded in scientific principles. Because of that, having magical power alone was not enough, proper understanding was also required. Hearing about the studying involved caused her to sulk. Raito looked ahead and noticed monsters in the distance, deciding to give her a demonstration instead. He chose to use fire magic. Karen's excitement returned as she anticipated something like a fireball. An explosion followed, leaving her startled as she turned toward Raito. This result did not match what she had imagined. What she had envisioned was launching visible fireballs, forging a sword engulfed in flames, or dramatically extending a hand while chanting a spell. In response, Raito manifested a flame resting on his palm to clarify whether that was closer to her expectations. She found that display far more appealing, remarking that sudden explosions felt less magical and more like ordinary gas detonations. Raito reminded her that this world was not a game but reality, and that wasting time on chanting would only lead to being defeated by monsters. What truly mattered was fighting with efficiency. Karen reluctantly accepted this, though she still secretly longed to shout out the names of spells. Raito remarked that once she became stronger, he thought shouting them would be fine. She resolved to do her best. Her studies began in earnest. After some time, she admitted to feeling exhausted, her head completely overwhelmed. Raito acknowledged that this had gone on for quite a while and decided to end the lesson there since it was her first one. They began heading back toward the gate. As they walked, Karen called out to her master again and asked whether he truly believed she would someday be able to use magic, given how disordered her thoughts felt and how incapable she seemed at the moment. Raito explained that in magic, people possessed affinities for certain elements such as water or earth, and that for some reason these affinities often connected to their names. Her name was Karen, and with a name like that, Raito believed she should be well suited to fire magic. Someday, she would definitely be able to use it. Karen looked down at her palm, quietly reflecting on the certainty of that statement. At that moment, Raito noticed something unusual ahead. He focused his attention forward and realized a crowd was gathering in their path. Sensing trouble, he told Karen to stop, and the two of them halted. From within the crowd, Nomura stepped forward and declared that he had been waiting for Raito, sneering that Raito had quite the nerve to show his face after humiliating him before. Raito immediately remembered who Nomura was. Nomura continued, stating without hesitation that Raito was as good as dead, and then turned his attention to Karen, suggesting she should obediently submit herself to them. He went so far as to threaten that he would strip her in front of Raito as a warning. Karen froze in shock at the threat. Raito calmly reassured her that a small group like them posed no threat to him. He issued Nomura a final warning, telling him to back off while he still could. Nomura responded by angrily telling Raito to shut up, mocking him as a low-ranking adventurer at the very bottom of the hierarchy. He sneered that if Raito had truly been strong, he would not have retired at such a young age. Karen asked her master what they should do. Raito told her not to worry, pointing out that these men were weak and that even their battle stances were completely flawed. Nomura gave a signal, and his companions moved in to attack. Raito told Karen that monsters were far tougher than these men and that she had nothing to fear. He watched Karen closely and instructed her to dodge at the right moment. She reacted instinctively and avoided the attack. Surprised by her own movement, She wondered if she had really dodged it. Raito affirmed that she had, reminding her that these men were far weaker than the wolf monsters she had fought. They were only acting intimidating because they had numbers on their side. He told her plainly that she was getting stronger. Raito then considered how to bring the situation under control. He instructed Karen to put distance between herself and the group. If things dragged on, the conflict would never end. So since the opportunity presented itself, he decided to show her a different kind of magic than before. As the men advanced once more, Raito declared that this time he would use wind magic. Just as they were about to strike, their movements stopped abruptly. Raito extended his palm, and the men suddenly began to choke. Their weapons slipped from their hands and fell to the ground. Nomura reacted in confusion, demanding to know what was happening. Raito fixed his gaze on him, and Nomura soon felt it as well. Struggling, he muttered in confusion, unable to understand what was happening to his body. He complained that he could not breathe before collapsing to the ground. Raito briefly questioned what that phenomenon was before answering himself. It was magic. He explained that he had simply reduced the oxygen concentration in the air surrounding them. He then checked on Karen, asking if she had been hurt. She confirmed that she was fine. Raito reassured her that there was no danger, explaining that the men had merely lost consciousness due to oxygen deprivation. He then stated that the next demonstration would be gravity magic. Immediately afterward, the unconscious men began to float into the air. Karen murmured in awe that magic was truly amazing. Raito told her that magic could be used in countless different ways. As they left the dungeon, Karen declared that someday she would be able to do the same. She stared at her palm and softly attempted to invoke fire magic, but nothing happened, and only silence followed. Raito noticed and asked what was wrong. She replied that it was nothing. Above them, the men continued to float as Raito and Karen walked back toward the reception area. The receptionist demanded to know what in the world had happened. Raito explained that the men had attacked them inside the dungeon, so he had subdued them and knocked them unconscious. He further requested that the receptionist arrange for the men to be handed over to the police. The receptionist then asked whether the person who had collapsed there was Nomura. The elderly man standing beside the receptionist turned his gaze toward Nomura, his expression shifting in surprise as he recognized him. He sharply questioned Raito about what he had done. The old man revealed that Nomura was the son of Councilman Nomura and asserted that since Raito had inflicted enough harm to cause someone to lose consciousness, Raito himself should be the one turned over to the authorities. Raito immediately rejected that claim and stated that Nomura and the others had been the aggressors. He made it clear that he did not care whether Nomura was the son of a politician or anyone else, pointing out how foolish it was to attack someone directly in front of a security camera. The old man visibly panicked at this remark. Raito went on to say that if the old man believed he was lying, he could simply check the security camera near the gate, which should have recorded the entire incident. The old man tried to object, worrying aloud about what would happen if the matter escalated into something serious, but he was cut off when Raito firmly declared that he would be filing a criminal report without fail. Raito reasoned that if those men were allowed to walk free, they could very well attack again. The old man was taken aback by Raito's resolve. He turned and walked away, warning Raito not to claim later that he had not been advised, insisting that he should not regret this decision in the future. From behind Raito, Karen quietly asked whether this was really all right. Raito reassured her that it was fine, explaining that they would be coming here frequently from now on, and that was precisely why they needed to eliminate any potential concerns ahead of time. Karen expressed her gratitude to her master. Raito then informed Sarawatari that he would be heading to file a police report and asked if she could take care of the paperwork for the magic stones in the meantime. Sarawatari agreed and offered a sincere apology for everything that had happened. Raito moved ahead, signaling for them to wait. Karen confided to Sarawatari how frightening the situation had been. Sarawatari agreed that it truly was and added that she would be reporting that employee's conduct to her superiors. Even so, she remarked that Hiragi was very fortunate to have such a wonderful master. Karen readily agreed, affirming that her master was an incredible person. Raito soon returned to them and noticed their expressions, asking what was going on and whether they had been talking about something amusing. Karen dismissed it, saying it was nothing. At the start of Chapter 6, Karen was preparing pork with ginger, green onions, and a wide variety of seasonings. Once everything was laid out, she decided it was time to focus seriously on cooking. As Raito was about to head out the door, Karen informed him that lunch might end up being a little late. When he wondered what she was making, she reacted playfully and insisted that it would remain a secret until it was finished. Raito reflected on how, ever since Karen had begun living with him, she had taken responsibility for all the housework. He reminded her that he had already hired professionals to handle those tasks and that she did not need to push herself, but Karen consistently maintained that she needed to repay him for saving her life. Raito then noticed that she was cooking while still wearing her pajamas and questioned it. Karen explained that she did not own an apron. Understanding her reasoning, Raito suggested that they go out later to buy one. Karen was visibly delighted by the idea and expressed her gratitude. Watching her reaction, Raito thought that Karen had grown quite accustomed to this new way of life. When the dish was finally complete, Karen excitedly announced that she had made kakuni, a braised pork belly dish. The cooking process had taken quite some time, and she mentioned that she had also prepared a large amount of rice. Rido praised her skills, thinking that she was an excellent cook, and Karen accepted the compliment happily. Rido then brought up another practical matter, noting that they also needed to arrange a new smartphone contract for her, since hers had apparently been cancelled at some point. Karen acknowledged that this was true. Rido pointed out that it would become inconvenient if they were unable to contact each other while apart. Karen remarked that she had rarely seen him use his phone. Rido explained that, in the past, he communicated with his fellow adventurers through the contact function on their adventurer licenses, which was why they did not know each other's phone numbers. Karen understood. Rido paused as a realization struck him. Since his license had expired, he had not contacted anyone at all. Later that day, they returned to combat training. Karen slashed at one of the wolves, and Rido recognized the timing of her attack. Karen followed through with another swing of her sword, but her expression suddenly changed. She found that she could not pull the blade free. As she took in her surroundings, she realized that another wolf was right behind her. Her thoughts raced as she tried to decide what to do. In a sudden decision, she released her grip on the sword and dodged out of the way of the charging wolf. Rido immediately cut it down and acknowledged that her choice had been the correct one. The defeated wolf turned into a magic stone. After sitting down, Karen admitted that she had completely panicked during the moment and felt that Rido could have stepped in a little sooner. Rido responded that he had trusted her to be able to evade the attack. He examined her sword and noted that it had broken more easily than expected, with the blade badly chipped. He told her that they would need to visit a weapon shop. Karen reacted with surprise, thinking that it sounded very much like something a real adventurer would do. Rido agreed, adding that it could be enjoyable even just to browse. He decided that Karen had worked hard enough for the day and that they would head out. Karen expressed her excitement, humming to herself at the thought of visiting a weapon shop. Observing her reaction, Rido thought that her emotions were extremely easy to read. Eventually, they arrived at the B1F weapons and armor store known as the Town of Beginnings. Karen took in the name, reflecting on the phrase, Town of Beginnings. As they descended the stairs, Rido explained that it was a well-known shop designed specifically to cater to beginners. Rido opened the door, and Karen was immediately impressed by the sight before her. A large number of weapons were displayed throughout the shop, filling her field of vision. To her, it felt like something straight out of a video game world. Rido noted that there was a wide variety available and told her to choose whatever weapon she felt most comfortable using. Karen eagerly agreed. As she examined the displays, Karen quietly reflected on just how many different kinds of weapons existed. There were spears, axes, daggers, and many other implements whose names she did not even know. Her attention eventually lingered on one particular category. She recalled the moment when Rido had cut down a monster with ease, and as that memory resurfaced, she concluded that a sword was still the best choice after all. Meanwhile, Rido approached the counter while holding his broken sword and requested maintenance. A man greeted him and asked about the condition of the weapon. After inspecting it, the man explained that continuing to use a damaged sword like that would be difficult. Rido responded that this was exactly what he had expected. He asked only for the chipped portions of the blade to be repaired, explaining that he did not intend to use it in real combat anymore. The man understood and inferred that the sword must hold great importance for Rido. Rido smiled in response, affirming that it did. He reflected that, in the past, he had once swung that sword with everything he had. Rido then returned to look for Karen and asked whether she had already decided on a weapon. When he did not see her nearby, he assumed she had ventured deeper into the shop. He soon found her standing still, staring at a single item. It was a sword, and Karen was simply gazing at it in silence. Rido commented on the sword's beautiful red color, which startled her. He asked whether the sword had truly caught her interest, and she confirmed that it had. The man from earlier approached them and explained that the sword was a masterpiece designed for advanced users, making it a rare item even for their shop. Its center of gravity required careful handling, but its cutting power was exceptional. Before the man could go on to mention its high price, Rido immediately stated that he would buy it. His decision was instantaneous. The man was even more shocked when Rido added that he would pay the full amount by card. Karen questioned whether he was truly certain about such a purchase. Rido affirmed that he was. He mentioned having once heard that a good weapon chooses its own master, and he believed that this sword had been calling out to Karen. Even so, he clarified that although he would buy it now, he would not allow her to use it yet. Instead, they would purchase another sword, one better suited to her current abilities. Once she had grown strong enough, he would give her the red sword. Karen accepted this condition with a bright smile, agreeing happily. Later, back in the dungeon, Karen held her new sword and examined it closely. Soon after, wolves began to attack. She lowered her stance and swung her blade with determination, cutting down one enemy and then another. She was astonished by the sharpness of the sword. Rido remarked that, since she had obtained a new weapon, he thought they might try venturing a little deeper into the dungeon than usual, but it appeared that she was handling it without any trouble. Karen asked what he meant, and Raito explained that within a dungeon, monsters grow stronger the farther one moves away from the entrance. Karen realized that this meant the monsters in their current area were of medium strength, and Raito confirmed that she was correct. At that moment, Karen noticed another monster approaching. Her eyes widened when she saw it. This one was far larger than the others and possessed 4 eyes. Raito signaled for her to stop and stepped in front of her, telling her to fall back because this monster was different. He explained that it was the boss of the dungeon's woodcutter field area and that it must have wandered into their location by mistake. Karen was shocked to learn that it was a boss monster. Raito went on to explain that such encounters were so rare that even those actively searching for one would have difficulty finding it. However, since they had already encountered it, there was no way to avoid the situation. Karen considered his words carefully. After thinking it through, she declared that she wanted to try fighting it herself. Raito refused, judging that it was still far too early for her to face something like that. Karen insisted that she wanted to test her current strength, her eyes filled with determination. Seeing her resolve, Raito smiled, realizing that trying to talk her out of it would be pointless. He told her not to push herself too hard. Karen acknowledged this and stepped forward to face the monster. At the start of Chapter 7, Karen stood facing the boss of the woodcutter's field. In Raito's assessment, the dungeon itself was classified as G-rank, yet the monster's strength was closer to that of an E-rank threat. As long as Karen was wearing her inner suit, there was no real concern about her being seriously injured. Even so, given her current level, it was unlikely that she could truly stand against such an opponent. Raito resolved that he would intervene and stop the fight if the situation became dangerous, and Karen acknowledged this, understanding that she needed to be cautious. Raito explained that the boss only attacked when it sensed hostility, and that the battle would begin the instant Karen took even a single step forward. As soon as she advanced, the boss leapt into the air. Karen remained alert and moved sideways at once, narrowly avoiding the attack as the monster missed her. She immediately swung her sword in response, but her strike failed to connect. She was startled by this outcome, realizing that this enemy was entirely different from the monsters she had fought before. The boss launched itself at her again, prompting a cry of surprise from Karen as she desperately dodged while trying to think of her next move. She found herself barely able to evade its relentless attacks, leaving her no opportunity to mount a proper counterattack. Raito watched her closely from the sidelines. Karen attempted another swing, but she lost her footing mid-motion and fell backward. Even as she tried to rise, determined not to give up, the boss moved in to bite her. At that critical moment, Raito stepped in and stopped the monster with his own sword. Raito judged that this was enough and brought the fight to an end. Karen was taken aback by his sudden intervention. Raito told her plainly that, with her current abilities, it was impossible for her to continue any further and that she needed to give up this time. Karen protested internally, believing that if she fought just a little longer, she might start to understand how to deal with it. Raito countered this by reminding her that if an adventurer was injured and became unable to fight, they would lose their means of earning a living. Adventuring was a profession in which reckless overexertion was strictly forbidden. He firmly emphasized that she must not forget her original goal, and that knowing when to retreat was just as important for an adventurer as knowing how to fight. Karen clenched the grass beneath her hand and fell silent. After a moment, she accepted the situation, acknowledging that she understood and that she would give up this time. Raito approved of her decision, telling her that it was the right answer. Even without defeating the boss, she could still obtain her adventurer's license, and they would continue doing their best from there onward. Karen gazed off into the distance, feeling a deep sense of frustration. She slapped her own cheeks, repeating that the feeling was frustrating, and then resolved herself. She decided that her goal would be to defeat the 4th boss someday, and that she would definitely accomplish it. Raito paused at her declaration, then let out a small chuckle, thinking that she truly made teaching worthwhile. Karen reaffirmed her vow to defeat the 4th boss, determined to see it through no matter what. On that same day, an unrelated event occurred at the National Adventurers Guild, Tokyo Branch 3. Aizawa was summoned by his section chief. The chief mentioned having heard that Aizawa was getting married. Aizawa apologized for not reporting it sooner and explained that the preparations were progressing smoothly, thanks in part to the chief's support. The chief expressed his happiness, remarking that his earlier advice, about not holding back if there was a woman he wanted, seemed to have paid off. Aizawa explained that his fiancée had previously been involved with another man for several years, but that he had persistently courted her. In the end, she chose Aizawa, deciding that a civil servant like him was a better match than an adventurer. The chief commented on this, noting that her former partner had been an adventurer. Aizawa agreed and added that a bottom-rank adventurer was not suitable for her. He further stated that he had promised to make her happy from that point forward. The chief laughed, praising his spirit. Shortly afterward, another voice called out to Aizawa. A female co-worker informed him that the guild master was summoning him and that it appeared to be urgent. Aizawa was puzzled by this development, wondering why the guild master would want to see him. He excused himself from the section chief and speculated about the reason as he made his way there, briefly entertaining the unlikely idea that even the guild master might want to personally congratulate him. Dismissing the thought, he knocked on the door. Inside the room, two people were already seated. The woman wearing glasses asked whether he was Aizawa Katsuki. She introduced herself as Shirori Kanzaki, the deputy branch master of the Japanese division of the International Adventurers Guild. Hearing the word international, Aizawa immediately wondered if this was some kind of headhunting attempt for an overseas assignment. He greeted her politely, introduced himself, and expressed his thanks for them coming all the way to the National Adventurers Guild, Tokyo 3rd Division. Shirori acknowledged his formal introduction but stated that there was no need for a lengthy preamble. After a long period of investigation, they had finally traced the matter back to Aizawa. She brought up the incident in which Aizawa had forced an adventurer to retire the other day. At that moment, fear surged through Aizawa. In his mind, the situation was disastrous. He wondered if she had discovered that he had used a restricted terminal. Though flustered, he managed to explain that he had only used the external information terminal as part of his official duties. Shirori made it clear that she had not come to reprimand him for using the terminal. Her real concern was the adventurer whom Aizawa had forced into retirement, Raito Haruzaki. Upon hearing the name, Aizawa reacted dismissively, thinking of Raito as a rough and uncivilized man. He explained that Raito was actually his fiancée's former boyfriend. According to Aizawa, Raito had been unable to secure stable employment even after graduating, which caused his kind-hearted girlfriend constant worry. His fiancée had told him that she wanted Raito to live a proper life, and for that reason Aizawa had forced Raito to retire on the spot. Shirori was visibly shaken by this explanation. The idea that Harukaze had been forced into retirement left her stunned. Aizawa attempted to calm her, but Shirori sharply rejected the notion, questioning how she could possibly remain calm under such circumstances. Aizawa responded that he had believed Raito to be nothing more than an average adventurer. However, if someone of Shiori's standing was personally searching for Raito, then it must mean that Aizawa had committed some kind of serious offense. Shirori questioned what Aizawa was talking about and firmly denied that interpretation. She revealed that the man Aizawa had driven out, Raito Harukaze, was in fact the SSS rank adventurer known as Zero. Aizawa was left in shock. The name echoed in his mind as he struggled to process it. He tried to confirm whether she meant Zero, the legendary figure known throughout the field. Shirori confirmed it. Aizawa pressed further, asking whether this was the same Zero who could harvest S-rank magic stones with ease. Once again, Shirori affirmed it. Still unable to believe it, Aizawa asked if she meant the only SSS rank adventurer in all of Japan. Shirori corrected him, stating that Zero was one of the strongest adventurers in the entire world. The realization finally began to sink in for Aizawa, though he continued seeking confirmation, as if hoping there had been some mistake. Growing angry, Shirori called him by name and stated that she needed to get in contact with Harukaze immediately. She asked whether Aizawa's fiancé might know any way to reach him. By then, Aizawa had gone completely pale. Stammering, he said he would try calling his fiancé. Kaori's phone received the call from Katsuki. She answered casually, mentioning that it was fine because she was off work that day. Katsuki asked her about Harukaze's contact information. Kaori replied that she had deleted Raito's phone number and messages a long time ago. She explained that she had never been fond of staying at home, and even when Raito had invited her over, she had always refused. Aizawa pleaded with Kaori, telling her that something serious was happening and that he needed any information she could provide, no matter how small. Kaori tried to think of something that might help. After a moment, she recalled a certain girl, the one who had introduced her to Katsuki in the first place. The girl Kaori remembered happened to work at the Katsushika branch of the Adventurers Guild. According to her, Raito had visited there recently. Hearing this over the phone, Aizawa reacted with relief, feeling as though he had been saved, and expressed his gratitude repeatedly. After ending the call, Kaori was left wondering what exactly was going on with Aizawa and why he had sounded so desperate. Meanwhile, Aizawa stood frozen in place, visibly tense. He turned toward Shirori and reported that there had been a confirmed sighting of Raito at the Katsushika branch. Shirori reacted immediately to the name of the location. The man standing beside her pointed out that Katsushika was known as a G-rank dungeon area meant for beginners, questioning why someone like Raito would be there. Shirori concluded that the matter was no longer something to be handled here. She declared that she would head to Katsushika immediately and that the remaining issues would be discussed later. After thanking Aizawa for the information, she abruptly exited the room, slamming the door behind her. Left behind, Aizawa muttered to himself, clinging to the thought that he was an elite government employee and that someone like a bottom-ranking adventurer should not matter to him. At that moment, the man who had accompanied Shirori sharply reprimanded Aizawa. Startled, Aizawa responded stiffly. The man explained that adventurers were the ones who searched for magic stones and supplied energy to the world, making them people who deserved gratitude rather than contempt. He stressed that Aizawa must never look down on them as bottom feeders, reminding him that without adventurers, the very work Aizawa did would not even exist. The man then patted Aizawa on the shoulder and instructed him to remain at home on standby until a decision was made regarding his situation. Later, Back in the dungeon, Karen admitted that she was completely exhausted. Raito observed that she had been unusually motivated ever since her encounter with the boss monster. Karen reacted cheerfully, clearly energized by the idea of becoming stronger and defeating the fourth-floor boss as soon as possible. As she spoke, she noticed someone approaching. It was Sarawatari. Sarawatari remarked that Haruzake had finally returned. Raito asked what was going on, noting that Sarawatari appeared flustered. She explained that someone was waiting for him in the reception room and specifically requested to see him. She asked whether he could come as soon as he finished handling his settlement. Raito acknowledged her request. At the reception room, Raito opened the door. Shirori was there, and she expressed that she had finally found him, revealing that she had been searching for him for some time. At the beginning of Chapter 8, Raito questioned why Kanzaki had appeared there at all. Kanzaki, in turn, reacted by questioning what he meant, emphasizing how desperately she had been searching for him and how she never once imagined that he would be hiding out in a place like that. Raito apologized, admitting that he should have contacted her at the very least. Karen stood quietly behind him as he introduced her to Kanzaki, explaining that Kanzaki was the submaster of the International Adventurers Guild and reassuring Karen that she was not a bad person. Raito greeted Kanzaki, noting that it had been quite some time since they last met. Their previous encounter had been when he was discussing his intention to retire, an idea she had stopped at the time. Since they were going to talk properly now, Raito asked whether it was acceptable for Karen to join them, and Kanzaki readily agreed. She invited them to sit down, suggesting they have a long and pleasant discussion. Kanzaki began by addressing the actions of Aizawa Katsuki, apologizing on his behalf as a representative of the guild. Even though they belonged to different branches, they were still part of the same Adventurers Guild organization. Raito responded by asking who Aizawa was, which visibly surprised Kanzaki. She pointed out that Aizawa was the person who had forced Raito into retirement. Raito reflected that he had never actually learned the man's name. He then explained that while Aizawa had indeed stolen his girlfriend, and he would not deny holding a grudge over that, there was no real reason for Kanzaki to apologize. Raito admitted that he had already been thinking it was about time to quit being an adventurer anyway. His former girlfriend had despised the fact that he was one, and during that period, Aizawa, who was a guild staff member, had entered the picture. That was all there was to it. In the end, both he and his ex-girlfriend got what they wanted. He even laughed it off. Kanzaki remarked that his ability to move on so quickly was astonishing and noted that he truly had not changed at all. She then asked whether he would consider returning to being an adventurer. Raito immediately dismissed the idea, stating that he had finally managed to quit for good. Kanzaki sighed, saying she had expected that answer. Raito added that he was blacklisted anyway, so he believed returning would be impossible even if he wanted to. Kanzaki froze mid-sip of her tea, then abruptly stood up, shocked by the mention of a blacklist. She questioned how such a thing could have happened and wondered if Aizawa Katsuki was involved again. Raito denied that, explaining it was merely an acquaintance who worked as a receptionist. He urged Kanzaki to calm herself, pointing out that she was frightening his companion. Kanzaki turned her attention to Karen, who hesitantly asked whether Raito was some kind of important person. Realizing her behavior, Kanzaki apologized for showing such an unbecoming side of herself and said she would start over. She then provided a brief explanation meant specifically for Raito's companion. Kanzaki explained that Raito was one of only 12 SSS-ranked adventurers in the entire world, widely known by the title Zero. Furthermore, he was the only Japanese person in history to ever reach SSS rank. In other words, he was essentially the strongest individual in all of Japan. Karen was left completely stunned by this revelation and wondered aloud whether she should address him with honorifics such as Master Sama or Haruke-sama. Raito immediately told her to continue calling him as she normally did. Kanzaki then went on to explain that all magic stones collected by adventurers across the world were centrally managed by the International Adventurers Guild. These stones were then distributed to each country as an energy source, with the amount allocated based on how many stones that country had delivered. At present, roughly half of the world's total magic stone energy was being gathered by the 12 SSS-ranked adventurers. If Raito were to retire, Japan's share of that energy would inevitably decline. Even so, there was no justification for forcing him to continue working as an adventurer against his own will. Although it was truly regrettable, the International Adventurers Guild decided that they would issue an official announcement stating that Raito had retired on amicable terms. Raito expressed his gratitude to Kanzaki for handling the matter. Kanzaki firmly added that, regarding Aizawa Katsuki and the employee from the Katsushika branch who had placed Raito on the blacklist, the guild would be taking proper disciplinary action against both of them. Raito accepted this outcome, but asked her to go easy on them. Kanzaki then turned her attention to Karen, pointing out that Karen had referred to Raito as her master earlier. Karen confirmed this, explaining that she was Raito's disciple, or at least aspiring to be one, and only then realized that she had stood up without thinking. Kanzaki smiled, remarking that anyone who became Haruke's disciple must possess considerable promise, and stated that the Adventurers Guild would be closely watching Karen's growth. Karen responded earnestly, acknowledging this expectation. In Raito's mind, everything was settled just like that. His retirement had been officially approved, and the world was informed that Zero had stepped away peacefully. Television broadcasts began speculating about the man behind the legendary name after his retirement. Commentators discussed how Zero could defeat monsters in mere seconds, imagining him as a towering giant, easily over 2 meters tall. Others countered that perhaps he relied more on magic in battle, envisioning him instead as a thin, scholarly type. The idea that such a person might be living somewhere nearby was dismissed as far-fetched. Aizawa, watching the broadcast, abruptly changed the channel with the remote. The screen shifted to a segment about a newly popular barbecue restaurant. His nervous demeanor did not go unnoticed, and Kaori questioned why he had changed the channel so suddenly. He brushed it off, insisting it was nothing, while inwardly thinking that he did not want to hear Raito's name even for a single second. Aizawa then apologized to Kaori for what he had mentioned earlier, explaining that his sudden transfer had come out of nowhere. Kaori responded calmly, noting that his transfer to Aichi was not exactly to some remote backwater. If she submitted a transfer request herself, she could keep her job and accompany him, so there was no need for him to apologize. Aizawa thanked her, clenching his fist as he did so. In his thoughts, he reassured himself that his cover story was flawless. The reality, however, was far harsher. A triple punishment consisting of a demotion, a transfer, and a 3-year pay cut, with his salary reduced by half. Even so, he reasoned that if both of them continued working, they should be able to manage. Being sent to Aichi was not the worst outcome imaginable. Someday, he believed, he would climb his way back to the top. With that resolve, he suggested they go out somewhere for lunch, and Kaori readily agreed. As they prepared to leave, Kaori glanced at the television, where the host was remarking on how expensive the restaurant was. She recalled that it was the very place Raito used to take her to all the time. The television host went on to explain that the average cost per person at the restaurant was an astonishing 100,000 yen. Hearing that, Kaori recalled Raito once telling her that the place was all you can eat, which made her wonder whether it was truly that expensive. Since Raito had always been the one paying, she had never actually realized the cost. Aizawa noticed her expression and asked what was wrong, but she brushed it off. In her thoughts, however, she remembered how she had complained to Raito that their dates were always cheap and tasteless, admitting that she had grown genuinely sick and tired of them. On that day, she had snapped at him, and now she found herself wondering whether she had said something truly unforgivable. At the same time, back at Raito's place, 2 phones were now present. Karen was in her room, unable to make up her mind. She was torn between choosing something casual and energetic or going with a more formal, mature look instead. While soaking in the bath, she finally decided to ask her master for his opinion. Raito's phone buzzed with her message asking which outfit would be better. He muttered to himself that she still had not decided, then called to confirm it was really her. He told her that both outfits suited her well, so she should just pick one and hurry up. Karen replied that since she was going, she wanted to look her absolute best, as it was a rare opportunity to meet his fellow adventurers. Raito quietly remarked that her best outfit was probably unnecessary, since those guys would not complain even if she showed up in pajamas. Karen countered that this was exactly why it mattered. His friends were some of the strongest people in all of Japan, and she wanted to make sure she did not come across as rude. With a sigh, Raito realized how serious she was taking this. He then suggested the casual outfit, specifically the one with the large logo, reasoning that it would definitely please them. Karen considered his suggestion carefully before deciding to go with the casual choice. She set her phone down on a towel and let out a long sigh, feeling her nerves building. Raito glanced at the clock and thought that she was still in the bath. Afterward, Karen emerged dressed in the casual outfit and told her master that she was ready to go. Raito remarked that it looked good on her. Looking him over, Karen noticed that he was wearing his usual outfit and questioned it. Raito answered confidently that they were just meeting the usual group, and besides, he was the type who simply rotated between several high-quality outfits. They boarded a train together, and during the ride, Raito explained that the clan he once belonged to was called the Twilight Tea Party. Since he had been the leader and had retired, the clan had ended up disbanding. The remaining members had either formed new groups or even established new clans of their own. Given how skilled they all were, he was certain they were doing well wherever they had ended up. Karen admitted that she was starting to feel nervous. Raito reassured her, telling her to relax because they were all good people and that she would get along with them once she started talking. Karen steadied herself as they arrived outside the meeting place. The door bore a sign indicating it was reserved. Raito noted that they had arrived and said they would head inside right away. Upon arriving at the location, Karen immediately recognized the restaurant. It was the Starry Sky restaurant, a place she remembered seeing on television. It was known as an extremely popular establishment where people normally had to wait for hours just to get inside, and it supposedly did not even accept reservations. Curious about this, she wondered how they had managed to enter so easily. Raito explained that the Starry Sky restaurant was owned by a clan subordinate to the Twilight Tea Party. In other words, it was a business operated by his adventurer companions. Hearing that, Karen muttered to herself that at this point, It felt as though her master was behind nearly everything extraordinary. Raito laughed and brushed that notion aside, saying it did not quite work that way. He then opened the door and gestured for her to go in. A staff member warmly welcomed them and guided them inside. Once they entered, it was clear that everyone had already arrived. A man wearing sunglasses and 2 women greeted them. Sakai Guru remarked that they had been waiting for young Master Ray. One of the women, Maya Howard, commented that it had been a long time since she had last seen Raito. The vice leader, Itano Naomi, mentioned that she had been looking for him. Raito responded by greeting everyone in return and asked how they had been doing. Guru replied that things had been fine overall, but mentioned that there had been quite an uproar surrounding Raito's retirement. Raito apologized for causing them trouble and explained that a great deal had happened. Maya then turned her attention to Karen and asked whether she was Raito's disciple. Karen awkwardly confirmed it and introduced herself. Maya immediately remarked on how cute Karen was and asked her age. When Karen said she was 18, Maya cheerfully noted that meant she was already an adult and suggested they drink together sometime. Naomi quickly corrected her, pointing out that Karen could not drink alcohol until she turned 20 and that Maya should not put their guest in an uncomfortable position. Naomi then invited Raito and Karen to take their seats, asking if they were fine sitting on the opposite side. At that moment, another woman murmured softly and called Karen over, noticing that Karen was wearing clothing from her brand. She thanked Karen for supporting it. Karen was unsure how to respond and froze for a moment. The woman then took her seat with graceful elegance. Karen finally realized who she was, Maria Evans, a figure she had seen before in magazines. Feeling shy, Karen mentioned that she had just visited Twilight in May the other day. Raito commented that it must have been quite a surprise. He then explained that Maria was also a member of the Twilight Tea Party and that she had been managing the Twilight M group while continuing her work as an adventurer. Karen finally understood why her master had advised her to choose that particular outfit. Naomi then asked everyone to settle down and checked whether they all had their drinks. She announced that, unfortunately, the Twilight Tea Party had been disbanded. From that point onward, she wanted each of them to carve out their own new paths. Still, she believed that everyone present was more than capable of succeeding no matter where they went. She also mentioned that Raito had been found safe and had even taken on a promising disciple. Naomi seemed ready to continue, but Maya stopped her, saying that was enough. Naomi agreed, cleared her throat, and raised her glass in a toast to the Twilight Tea Party. Later, once they were seated and the gathering had settled, Goro confirmed the story that Raito's marriage proposal had not worked out and commented that it was unfortunate. Raito replied that if someone better than himself had come along, then there was nothing that could be done about it. Goro laughed and told him not to let it bother him. Maya then asked whether that meant Raito was single and teasingly suggested it was Naomi's chance. Naomi responded that, as she had already explained, their relationship was not like that. Maria continued to drink from her glass with refined elegance, a sight that left Karen watching in silent admiration. Noticing that Karen had been unusually quiet for some time, Raito pointed it out and asked what was going on with her. Karen admitted that she had always seen Raito as a dependable adult figure, someone she could rely on without hesitation. However, after coming to this gathering, she was surprised to see that he was treated more like a junior among the others. Raito laughed it off, explaining that adventurers came from a wide range of ages and that even he was considered relatively young by their standards. He then informed Karen that the clubhouse sandwich she had ordered had arrived. She thanked him and took a bite, immediately expressing how delicious it was, remarking that it truly lived up to the reputation of a restaurant people lined up for. Raito then held up another plate and mentioned that the cheese sandwich was also excellent, asking whether she wanted to try a bite. Karen agreed without hesitation. Maya and Goro watched the exchange closely, then glanced at each other with knowing expressions. Maya pointed out that she had definitely just seen something, and Goro enthusiastically agreed. Goro questioned whether Raito and Karen were truly nothing more than master and disciple. Raito responded that there was no other relationship between them. Goro chuckled, commenting that no matter how one looked at it, what they had just done was something only lovers would do. He exaggerated the gesture, mimicking the act of offering a bite, and asked Maya if she understood what he meant. Maya nodded while laughing. Karen became flustered upon hearing the word lovers and hurriedly tried to deny that there was anything like that between them. At that moment, a waiter arrived behind her carrying their draft beer and a smoked chicken sandwich with fries on the side. However, the waiter slipped, sending the food flying into the air. Instantly, the clan members reacted. Goro caught the beer, Maya snatched the sandwich midair, and Naomi skillfully caught the fries still on the plate. Every item was saved. Karen apologized repeatedly to the waiter, who also apologized in return. Goro proudly shouted that they had looked pretty cool just now, didn't they? Karen agreed enthusiastically, saying it had been amazing to see such fast and nimble movements. She added that she hoped one day she would be able to move like that herself. Raito gently patted her head and reassured her that she definitely would, especially since she had him as her master. The three women watched the scene with meaningful smiles, their expressions warm and knowing. Raito noticed their gazes and asked what they were staring at, but Goro brushed it off, saying it was nothing. Later on, Maya waved at Karen and said that once Karen became a full-fledged adventurer, they should challenge a dungeon together. Karen waved back enthusiastically, promising that she would do her best. Raito observed that Karen seemed to have gotten along well with everyone, and she happily agreed, saying they were all incredibly kind. Raito then mentioned that he had some matters to take care of afterward and asked Karen to head back on her own. She agreed, and he waved as he walked away. As Karen left, she reflected that the day had been fun. She touched her cheeks, recalling how they had been called lovers, and a warm smile spread across her face. Later, as she arrived at the station, she noticed something unusual. A woman nearby was crying. The woman was muttering about what she was supposed to do from now on, while her phone continued to ring. Between her sobs, she murmured the name Kaori Shizuku and whispered pleas for someone to help her. Karen recognized the woman's uniform immediately. She was a receptionist from the Adventurers Guild, the same irritating person Karen had encountered the very first time she went into a dungeon. Karen initially decided to turn away and leave the scene behind. However, as the woman continued sobbing, she whispered about Kaori Shizuku, questioning whether they had really been friends and why her calls were not being answered. Those words struck something deep within Karen, triggering a memory of her own past, when she had desperately tried to call her parents, hoping they would pick up the phone. Two men soon approached the crying woman, asking what was wrong. One of them suggested that she talk to them about it instead, while the other laughed crudely and mocked her appearance, pointing out how messy her makeup had become. Seeing this, Karen forcefully shoved the two men aside and told them to move out of the way. She positioned herself directly in front of the woman. Recognizing her as the guild receptionist from before, Karen addressed her, noting that it had been a while. The receptionist recognized Karen as well, but before she could respond, Karen grabbed her hand and insisted that she come along and explain what had happened. Ignoring the men who called out after them, Karen led her away. They entered a cafe, where the woman continued to sniffle as she tried to compose herself. She explained that once it was discovered that she had placed Raito on the blacklist, her superior had summoned her privately. She was harshly reprimanded and told that her actions were unacceptable, especially with Japan facing potential energy shortages. It was only because of Raito's own wishes that the situation had not escalated into a lawsuit. Even so, she was informed that what she had done was absolutely unforgivable and warranted disciplinary dismissal. She was told that they never wanted to see her face again and ordered to leave immediately. Others around her branded her a criminal. Overwhelmed, she panicked and ran out of the building without thinking. Back in the cafe, Karen asked whether her name was Shimizu Mizuki, then let out a sigh. She remarked that, in the end, all that had really happened was that Mizuki had lost her current job, questioning whether it was truly something worth being so devastated over. Mizuki responded by explaining that she was a civil servant and admitted that she was not particularly smart. She emphasized how incredibly hard she had studied to pass the civil service examination. Her father, mother, grandfather, and grandmother had all been overjoyed that she had secured such a respectable position through her own effort, and she did not want to disappoint their expectations. Karen replied that her family was surely not happy simply because she had become a civil servant, but rather because all of Mizuki's hard work had finally paid off. Mizuki fell silent at those words. Karen continued, explaining that if Mizuki's family were to see how much she was suffering now, she did not believe they would ever force her to cling to her current job at the cost of her well-being. At that moment, Mizuki's phone vibrated. It was Kaori Shizuku calling. Mizuki answered, and Shizuku immediately asked what was wrong, sounding frantic. Shizuku explained that after finishing work, she had checked her phone and found countless missed calls from Mizuki. She asked where Mizuki was, saying she would head over right away. Mizuki broke down into sobs once more. Watching this, Karen let out a quiet sigh and told Mizuki that since things had already gone this far, she might as well stay and see it through. A girl entered the cafe and introduced herself as Ito Shizuku, Mizuki's friend. Karen remarked that they had been waiting for her, and Ito apologized, saying it seemed they had caused Karen trouble. Mizuki was shocked that Ito had actually come. Ito looked at Mizuki seriously and asked what she thought she was doing. Mizuki broke down and apologized repeatedly. Karen reflected that the enjoyable time she had spent just a few hours earlier now felt like a lie. Ito explained that she had been startled when she saw the call history on her phone, so she immediately tried calling Mizuki. Seeing Mizuki being comforted by a younger girl, Ito asked for an explanation. Mizuki admitted that she had done something terrible to Raito. Ito asked whether she meant Kaori's ex-boyfriend and whether Mizuki had actually met him. Mizuki explained that she had heard Raito had quit being an adventurer, but then he had appeared at her guild reception desk. When Ito asked what had happened, Mizuki confessed that she had put Raito on the blacklist. Ito was stunned and demanded to know why she would do something like that. Mizuki justified herself by saying that adventurers were full of awful people and that it was a bottom-tier job, something everyone said on social media, and something Katsuki had also said. Ito sighed deeply and stated that it was entirely Mizuki's fault. She told Mizuki to listen carefully and explained that adventurers were not all bad people and that it was not a bottom-tier occupation. Their work provided the resources that people's daily lives depended on, making it an important and admirable job. Ito further explained that Mizuki had abused her authority as a guild staff member by putting Raito on the blacklist, and that this was not comparable to some harmless prank from their school days. Mizuki could have ruined someone's life. Mizuki was shocked by how serious it was. She recalled that, at the time, she had simply wanted Raito to get a better job rather than return to being an adventurer, and she had never imagined that her actions could destroy his life. Ito explained that being blacklisted could leave a stain on someone's credit or trust records, and if that caused problems in Raito's daily life, Mizuki would have to take responsibility for it. Ito asked whether Mizuki understood everything she had done so far. Mizuki quietly acknowledged that she understood and admitted that what she had done was unforgivable. Karen watched the exchange with a gentle smile and commented that Mizuki had a good friend who would scold her so directly. Mizuki then said that she wanted to apologize to Raito. She apologized for asking this right after their meeting, but requested that Karen help her get in touch with him. Karen readily agreed and said it was completely fine. She stood up and, offering a suggestion while acknowledging she might be overstepping, proposed that if Mizuki was going to be fired from her current job, she should consider becoming an adventurer instead. The two women were taken aback by the idea. Karen explained that the idea was something she had picked up from her master. Stability, she said, was not made up of good things alone, and sometimes it was worth using an opportunity like this to aim a little higher. If Mizuki worked hard, there was far more potential for her future than remaining a civil servant. Mizuki hesitated at the suggestion, unsure of herself. Ito, however, paused and seriously considered the idea of becoming an adventurer. Not long after, they headed to Raito's building. Mizuki was visibly uneasy as she followed Karen inside. She nervously asked whether the hallway floor was made of marble and worried about what she should do if she accidentally scratched it. Ito reassured her that as long as she walked normally, everything would be fine. She also pointed out how incredible it was that Raito lived in such a place. Karen smiled and said she had been just as surprised the first time she came there. Karen turned the doorknob and opened the door, announcing to Raito, who was already inside, that she had brought some people with her. Raito asked what in the world was going on, recalling that he had told Karen to head home before him earlier, only for her to now suddenly bring his former classmate to meet him. Karen explained that a lot had happened. Raito greeted them, saying it had been a while, and recognized Ito as the former class president. Ito replied that she had thought for sure Raito had forgotten her, and added that she was no longer the class president, so he could just call her Ito or Shizuku. Raito invited them to sit on the sofa and asked whether coffee would be fine to drink. Before anything else could happen, however, Mizuki suddenly dropped to her knees in front of him. She bowed deeply, pressing herself to the floor as she apologized. Raito, Karen, and Ito were all stunned by the sight. Ito tried to call out to Mizuki, but Raito told her that she did not need to apologize, explaining that he had already been thinking of quitting anyway. Mizuki struggled to respond, remaining bowed in place. After a brief pause, Raito said that he understood her intentions. However, he made it clear that he could not accept her apology. From society's perspective, what she had done was not something that could be forgiven simply by apologizing. He explained that if he had been a full-time D-rank adventurer and had suddenly been blacklisted, the consequences would have been devastating. By Mizuki's unilateral decision, every path back to work would have been cut off. With no meaningful savings, he could have ended up hopeless and destitute. Mizuki clenched her fists tightly as she listened. Raito told her plainly that what she had done was extremely serious. Mizuki admitted that she had committed something awful. Raito continued, saying that this situation would not end with a simple apology. She needed to reflect on her actions and live her life carrying that responsibility, ensuring that something like this would never happen again. Mizuki stammered that she would never forget and swore that she would never do anything so foolish again. Raito smiled and said that if she truly understood, then the discussion was over. Since she had come all this way, he told her to take her time and relax. Karen offered to go and make the coffee. Ito knelt down beside Mizuki and told her that she had done well. Mizuki looked up at Ito with hopeful eyes. Ito then said that she had been thinking about something for quite a while. She revealed that she was going to quit her job as well and suggested that the two of them become adventurers together. Mizuki was shocked by the proposal. Ito explained that she was already at her limit at her current workplace, which was rife with power harassment and sexual harassment. Somehow, she had started wanting to aim for striking it rich as an adventurer. Ito then asked Raito what he thought about it. Raito agreed that it was a good idea. He said that if the two of them teamed up, their chemistry would probably be excellent, and that if they ever needed it, he could give them advice as well. Turning to Mizuki, Ito told her that they could go somewhere far away, make a fresh start, and do their best together. She asked whether Mizuki disliked the idea of becoming an adventurer. Mizuki replied that she did not hate it, and that if she could do it alongside a friend, she believed she could manage. She then hugged Ito tightly. Ito told her not to cling to her like that. Watching the two of them, Karen thought quietly to herself about friends. That night, after the two women had headed home, Raito thanked Karen for seeing them off. He remarked that it had been a rough day and that a lot had happened. He asked whether Karen wanted another cup of coffee or if it might already be time for dinner. Karen sat down without answering, remaining silent. Raito noticed her mood and sat beside her, asking what was wrong and whether something had happened. Karen began to speak, explaining that after watching the members of the Twilight Tea Party and people like Shimizu earlier that day, she had come to think that having friends was a wonderful thing. At the same time, she had found herself feeling jealous. Raito looked at her intently as she continued. She said that when her mother and father had abandoned her, she had thought about asking her friends for help. However, when she considered the possibility of causing them trouble, she could not bring herself to contact them. In the end, her phone contract expired, and just like that, she lost touch with everyone. She wondered what her friends were doing now, thinking that since they were in their third year, they were probably studying hard for their entrance exams. Raito asked whether she had transferred the data from her old phone. He suggested that she try contacting them using her new phone. Karen replied that her phone number and other details had changed, so they might simply ignore her. Raito said that part was up to luck. He gently patted her head and asked whether she remembered the first time they had met. Back then, Karen probably had not even considered the possibility of being ignored. He suggested that she try reaching out in a more casual way. Karen understood his point and agreed, saying that she would try contacting them the next day. She called out to her master and leaned her head against his shoulder. Raito asked if something was wrong or if she was feeling unwell. Karen replied that whenever she was having a hard time, Raito always gave her spot-on advice. Raito answered that it was only natural since he was her master. Karen smiled at him, saying that she felt better now and thanking him. Raito blushed, then chuckled and said he was glad to hear that. Karen added that she should start preparing dinner soon and declared that she would put her all into cooking again that day.